Dolly Parton is here. Good morning.
There's only one. Hi, Dolly Parton. Hi.
To you. Yeah, good to see all of you. Thanks for all those sweet words. Sweet, did you get that?
Yeah, we totally get it.
We saw what you did there. We saw it.
So Dolly, we wanted to do something fun for you today. So we're pitting former athletes, Dokoupil and Nate Burleson, against each other in a very different sort of competition. They will have the length of this interview to decorate some of those Duncan Hines cupcakes to the best of their abilities. And at the end, we're going to ask you to crown a winner.
Yes, using your products, yes.
Using your products. So there they are. They're going to be decorating those cupcakes. Are the men in your life good bakers?
Some of them are. Yeah, I have a few good friends that are pretty good cooks and bake pretty well. So I think everybody likes to cook something sweet. I think everybody has a big sweet tooth for the most part. So we learn how to do it, whether it's pretty or not. So I will judge those cakes. I hate to judge anything, but I'm going to make an exception in this case.
Can't wait.
You turned 78, Dolly. Look at you.
Yes.
You look so good. Did you bake your own birthday cake, or how were you treated? What did you do? Yeah, I see you. I see you.
Well, to be honest, though, I did, but I used some of my own cake mixes because I was actually working on my birthday. My sister, Rachel, she cooked my birthday dinner, but she said, I'm going to let you do your own cake. And so that's what I did. So I did one of my famous cakes. I actually went back and did one of the coconut cakes that we actually started the line with. We started this a couple of years ago, and it did so well. I thought, well, we're just going to keep expanding, and now we're here. And I actually am very excited because I've made a partnership deal with ConAgra, who actually, they own the Duncan Hines and so many other things. And later on, I'm going to have a whole line of things like frozen foods and other things besides just the baking. So you'll have some good food to eat before you eat your dessert.
Okay,
so,
all right.
But yeah, I had a good birthday.
Yeah, I want to.
And if you can work.
I want to try your
ahead.
pancakes. I want to try your pancakes.
Well, let's check in on Nate and Tony real quick to see how they're doing. Yeah, Tony's got a lot of sampling. It doesn't look like they're decorating. So,
Well,
Dolly, let me ask
that's
you about
what
this.
I do.
Yeah, exactly. We all do that when it comes to good baking. Let me ask you about this rock album, because you perform with some of the most incredible musicians in the history of popular music, and you're in that studio with them. You're with Steve Perry. You're with Ringo and Paul McCartney recording a version of Let It Be. What was that like?
Well, actually, I've known Paul for quite a while. I actually was not in the studio with him. He did that from his own studio because he had just come off of a tour, and so he was trying to get it all done. But I was in the studio with many of them, and I made a great connection with all the artists that I sang with. And it was a thrill for me because these are people that I've admired for so many years. And when I started into my rock album, I was singing all these great songs, never had a thought about asking anybody to join me. And about halfway through it, I was great songs, and I was just hearing their voices in my own heart and head. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if I could get a few of these people to join me? And so many of them did. I think we got about 24, 25 of the artists that actually were singing on some of their original hits. So it was a great honor and a great thrill, and I just really felt blessed to have them on the album. It's doing really well, and I'm very proud of it.
No, it's doing so well that on your birthday, you gave us a gift of extra songs, which I thought was very nice. I thank you. I love your album. Word on the street about you, Dolly Parton, is that you like surprises. Do you have a surprise for the audience today? Word on the street is you might.
Do I have a surprise today? I'm not really sure that I have a surprise other than to say that I'm just happy to be here and happy to be with all of you. I think my big surprise is just the fact that I'm doing all of these things. What did you hear that surprise was?
Okay, no, Dolly, we're always glad to see.
We're always glad to see you. We're looking at Tony and Nate. We got like a few seconds. What do you think? How'd they do?
Dallas Cowboy themed here, Dolly.
Oh, wow. I think they're the ones with the surprise. Maybe that's what they meant. They were going to surprise me by making me judge. Let me check you out. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
well,
look at those hearts. hearts. I love that.
Right.
Dolly, we love you. You're an American institution. You're getting those big hearts, boys. Thank you so much, Dolly.
My talk to the table is two former NFL greats, and I mean that, who were among the most dominant players in the league. Quarterback Cam Newton was selected first overall by the Carolina Panthers in 2011. And in 2015, he won league MVP, among plenty of other accomplishments. Brandon Marshall was a wide receiver who played 13 seasons. He was named to 6 Pro Bowls and was dominant every single year. Now the pair have teamed up off the field for their I Am Iconic tour. It's a live show in front of an audience that includes candid conversations about sports, mental health, and current events. Brandon and Cam, they're joining us now. What's up, y'all?
Hold on. Who's your X, who's your Z? Got Nate Burleson, wide receiver.
X, Nate to F.
Yeah, I'm in the slot. Torching the nickel
I don't know what you guys are talking
is this
about.
football talk?
Yeah.
But
Basically,
Cam,
where are you going to place us?
But Cam, you said when you saw Nate on the field in Detroit, you didn't think what?
I didn't think he had the star power that he has.
You didn't.
Yes. Just to see him morph into a more sports vertical, the NFL networks, the CBS Sports.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden now you see him on a more broader scale, and he's holding his own.
He is holding his own.
He's our hero.
As we know, it's all about opportunities with us because we're so much more than athletes. Brandon, I want to start with you. So you said it took 2 years for you to convince Cam to do this tour with you. So explain to us what is I Am Iconic.
Yeah, I want to know what your pitch was to him to finally get him to do it.
Cam, 5 years from now, we're going to be on Broadway, and it's going to say, I am iconic. We're going to win a Tony. This has never been done before, Cam Newton. We're going to bring a live show, your show, and also elements of Broadway together. We're going to take some of our biggest moments in sports, our hosts and our guests' biggest moments in their lives, and bring it into a scripted, almost play-type environment.
That's what you said.
No, I ain't say that. I was like, Cam said just make it make sense.
Make
It
dollars.
took 2 years.
So how did it make sense to you to finally connect and do this for real, Cam?
Well, I witnessed his I Am Athlete tour in Atlanta, and one thing about Brandon, he's very persistent.
That's true.
Almost like it's like that gnat at the barbecue.
Do you mean annoying, Cam? Annoying?
It's persistent. It's the same thing. It's a fine line. And he kept asking me that day, he's like, yo, bro, it's something that you will be inspired from. I witnessed it, and I said to myself, I was like, yo, I have to be a part of a live show. This is probably the closest thing. And I asked you, Nate, like, what's the closest thing being away from the game that gives you that same kind of
rush
feeling?
Yeah.
And being on stage was like, the improvisation that you have to have when somebody just blurts out something rather than somebody saying, hey, I love you, or hey, boo.
It's like a 2-minute drill in football.
Right, real talk. So you
on your toes.
You have to be equipped with the proper tools, kind of different than an actual show.
Yeah.
But when it's live in front of people, you still have to have that same.
But you guys say one of the goals is to show that athletes have more in common with the public in general. What do you mean by that?
I think we've already answered that. I think over the last 5 years, 6 years, I mean, it started with a lot of us, but LeBron, big moment, more than an athlete. And now to come, you have guys being themselves, wearing their hair. Nate, you're on CBS wearing your hair, different styles, right? So I think we've already answered that, and people just want more of it. And so seeing these shows that we have, Funky Friday, 4th and 1, I Am
Funky
Athlete.
Friday?
Yeah, Paper Route, those type of shows, you're seeing us in our truest form for sometimes the first time for some of these athletes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think, and I said, and we're living in the golden age of athlete-generated content. And the other days I was saying behind the scenes, it was like, we needed the CBS special interview just to be able to say, it really didn't happen that way. Nowadays, we just got X or Twitter or Instagram or, YouTube.
Go straight to the source.
Is it hard to be vulnerable, guys, and open up on stage the way you do?
It's hard to unteach yourself that being authentic is okay. And I mean, there's so much you have to protect being a player. You can't just say what you really want to say because it's a brand deal, it's the franchise, it's the fan base, it's team continuity. But now
I never worried about that. That's why I was always in trouble.
Lily Gladstone. Good morning and welcome back.
Good morning.
Because Tony, we could say we knew her when, Tony.
And you were not a Golden Globe winner,
Yes.
and not a nominee, and not on your way.
And
this
you
week.
haven't forgotten about us. So listen, we're going to take you back to that moment when you were FaceTiming your parents.
Yeah.
Which was really very nice. FaceTiming your parents, and you get the news that you're an Oscar nominee. Let's see that, and then you can tell us what was going on there, what you all were thinking at that moment.
Yeah,
Oh, we don't have that. Okay, sorry.
we don't have that.
Just paint the picture for us, Lily.
Act
Paint
it
the
out for us.
Yeah, act it out. Go
Well,
ahead.
it was sweet. I'd FaceTime my folks. You know, we were watching all of the categories. You know, we were cheering
Where were
some.
you?
and
Where were they?
I was actually in Osage County. I felt like because so many milestones through all of this and the whole project, it's, you know, really belongs to Osage Nation. This is their story. So it felt really special to be able to be there when the
Okay.
announcement came in.
And where were Mom and Dad?
Mom and Dad are at home north of Seattle.
Okay.
So I was FaceTiming with them, and it was funny, a few categories beforehand. You know, Mom had the phone flipped and was filming the TV, and, like, it's through her phone, so I can see kind of some white lines,
Yeah,
not anything.
yes.
Like, Mom, I don't want to watch that, you know?
Yes.
I went, you know, years ago, 2017, the eclipse. We were all trying to film the eclipse, but I realized what the memory was the way my grandma was reacting to it, so I flipped the camera on my grandma, and I was like, no, I want to see you and Dad's faces. I don't want to learn by kind of not being able to
Yes.
read it. I want to see your reactions. So it was great. And sure enough, I could barely hear my name, but I just saw my mom starting to fist pump in the air, and then my dad doing, I guess, what my grandma Lily always used to do, just clasping his hands together and going like
Grandma's
that.
name is Lily, too.
My great-grandma, yeah.
What
his
is this
grandmother.
like for you, though, Lily? Listen, I know this is very exciting. I get all that. But is there a part of you that the inside, because you're always so calm, so cool, so poised, is there a part of you that's screaming on the inside, like, I can't believe this is happening to me? Because
Oh,
you were
sure.
winning everything so far.
I mean, like I was visiting with you a little before, it feels a little bit like Inside Out. It's all of the little feelings.
All the little emotions.
Yep,
yes.
and you know they're talking with each other, they're reacting to each other. Some are louder than others at any given point, and then they pass the baton. So it's just, you know, it's a whole rainbow of emotion inside.
Well, no offense to 17 and 18-year-olds, but the wisdom of high school graduating classes is usually limited. But in your case,
Not at all.
they voted.
Brilliant.
They voted, and you were voted most likely to win an Oscar.
Love that story.
Yep.
That's pretty amazing. We have a picture, actually.
Yeah,
you
look
and,
at you.
Look at you.
Me and
Yeah.
Josh Ryder.
Josh Ryder, who is currently a restaurant owner, not an Oscar nominee. So they got you.
Not yet.
50% is right so
Your
far.
time is coming, Josh.
What's it like to look back on a photo like that and an accolade like that and have it almost, you know, you're on your way?
Yeah, and did you dream of that yourself back then?
You know, my dad did when I was little. It's in a way that it's almost teasing you, but also encouraging you in what you love to do. He'd always kind of drop that word.
Oscar winner.
When you
Yeah, in
win
his
an
little
Oscar.
pep talks, he'd always kind of just drop that idea in my head since I was maybe 8 or 9 and started doing theater. But yeah, it's been really heartwarming to see how that photo recirculating from high school has kind of re-brought our drama class back together. Like
That's amazing.
they're gonna watch the Oscars from our old high school theater in my graduating class, and a lot of people that I did drama with. So.
Hey,
I have to
great.
imagine you're hearing from people from the past now. What about offers maybe that weren't on the table before? Have you started? Has that buzz that we're talking about created more?
Oh yeah, and soon enough we'll have some exciting announcements to make. But there's stuff cooking.
You can do it today if you like.
We're
very friendly people, Lily.
I don't know. I see my manager
Which
like
camera?
No, yeah. Do not say it.
No.
I'll ask you reaction, though, community. You mentioned the high school group getting together, but what about the Osage community? You were there that day. What was that like?
I mean, I wasn't there, obviously, because I was at the Globes. But are you talking about that reaction? Or
For the Oscars, when you were there
I
for the
mean,
nomination?
both.
And what it means
Yeah.
to them to see you in this position.
You know, what it means to them is what I care about most. And that was probably the most touching thing, was watching the reaction when the Globes were announced, because Osage got together and had a watch party. And there were a lot of the community there. And, you know, each time I know a category that we were in came up, everybody was really excited and then, like, get deflated if we didn't win it. So by the time it came around to me, or late in the night, like one of my friends was telling me, everybody was like a little bit tired of getting excited and then not having the moment. But then if you watch it, you know, it went a little viral on
What are the
Twitter.
people saying to you, though? They must be
Just
reaching out to
so
you.
excited, so
Yeah.
proud. I mean, Yancey Redcorn, who plays Chief Bonacastle in it, he's said several times how watching it, and this is the highest praise. And you know, I've heard similar from Margie Burkhart, Molly's granddaughter, that it felt like what it may have been. You know, Molly to them felt like their grandmothers.
Yeah.
And that generation that they've, you know, maybe remember from early childhood or have definitely grown up hearing about.
We are all so excited for you, Lily. You know this, but were you as surprised as most of us were when Leo wasn't nominated for Best Actor?
Yeah.
Because the two of you were in tandem in that role off of each other, I thought.
I mean, he really was the shadow to the light that was Molly, you know, and I really don't feel, you know, he gave me a character that was so easy to believe, so easy to fall in love with, so easy to not see what this sinister side of him was doing. And that was the thing I was most nervous about, is like, you know, is Molly gonna be fully formed and have the dignity to really not see what's going on? And that came from everything that he did.
Well,
So.
I know he's cheering you on, too. I know he has
is.
said that many, many times. Can't wait to see you on the Oscar red carpet, what you're going to wear, who you're going to bring. Your mom was at the Golden Globes. You decided on a +1?
Mom's
I'm
definitely
free that
coming
day,
again.
March 10th. I'm wide open.
Mom,
Lily.
if Mom's not feeling it, I'll call you, Gayle.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Lily Gladstone. Thank you for
so
coming
much.
back to us.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate it.
Crystal Hefner is speaking out for the first time about life inside the Playboy Mansion and her marriage to controversial Playboy founder Hugh Hefner. Crystal Hefner spent nearly a decade living at the mansion and moved out after her husband's death in 2017. But in her new book, she writes she lost her identity because of this relationship. The book is called Only Say Good Things, Surviving Playboy and Finding Myself. And Hefner writes, quote, "The #1 rule of Hef's world is you didn't say anything bad about Hef. Life was a classic Hollywood romance, and life was good." Playboy did not respond to multiple requests for comment, and Crystal Hefner joins us now, first on CBS Mornings. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
So, Crystal, despite living at the mansion for nearly a decade, you say that it never felt like home. You write about having nightly curfews. You write about the power dynamics and conforming to specific body standards through plastic surgery. You've said in other interviews that you look back on that time with regret and disgust. Break down that characterization for me.
Being at the mansion was very hard. It was very traumatic looking back, and as I go through therapy after I left, your value was skin deep. So you had to make sure that you looked perfect at all times, or at least perfect to what, you know, Hef standards were.
And so when you say that you were brainwashed, you felt like you were brainwashed when you look back at that time, people will say, did you really not know what you were getting into by even being at a party at the Playboy Mansion?
Yeah, I think this was a time like pre-Me Too, and when Playboy was kind of more at its prime, and it's something that girls aspired to be part of, and you know, I was a part of that. I was 21, you know, I was an adult, but looking back now as a 37-year-old, I'm like, I was young and impressionable for sure.
Yeah, you knew what you were doing. It's interesting because I find myself with this book fascinated and repulsed at the same time. Because here you go, that first night, it's lights, camera, action, and all that we know about the Playboy Mansion. It was exciting, it was fun, you know, it was really sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So you go there, and that very first night, Hugh picks you out of the crowd, doesn't he? Can you move your hair? Your hair is gorgeous, but it's hitting your microphone. Okay. Yeah, if you could move it back. So he picks you out that very first night that you're there.
Yeah, very first night, and I felt like the chosen one.
Yes. Yeah, you felt like the chosen one, that he chose me.
Yeah.
And then once you're there, you said you really can't even trust any of the girls because you said, I think your words, we would shank each other. Everybody was sort of vying for his affection.
Yeah, everyone was against each other, and it was very hard. Female friendship was very hard there.
I like to, you said, Hefner was the poster boy for sexual liberation, but you never felt liberated in the bedroom. It was always framed as a choice, an invisible trap framed by the language of choice. Could you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think
that's very strong.
I think Playboy itself, when Hef started the brand, I think he wanted it to be all about freedom and expression. And when I was at the mansion, I feel I completely lost myself to what was expected of me. So there was nothing free about it. I felt trapped.
But yet you get married in 2012.
Yes.
This is the thing that got to me, because you are 26 and he is 86.
Yes.
So what were you thinking at that time? Because you can't call this love, could you?
No. I don't think it was love. I did care for him.
Yeah.
He was getting older, and I know he wanted to protect his image and just be the man that he was to the public. And
you also said you thought he needed you.
yeah, I felt sorry for him in a way, and felt that he really needed me, because at a certain point, like, I didn't need him for anything. I was good on my own. I had money. I had all these things. But I remember telling my mom, I'm like, he needs me. So I stayed.
You write that it was a job, that you didn't really love him, that he didn't have any of the qualities that you imagined that you would find in a man when you dreamed about potentially getting married. What did the job entail?
The job entailed completely losing myself to someone else. And I didn't fully realize that until later. So I just made myself Hef's mirror, and that was my job.
But as you sit here today, 36, 37?
37.
37. Still very young, very young.
Yes, indeed.
As you sit
like to
here
think.
today, what is your life like today, and what do you want people to know about the woman that you are today?
Life is good now. I finally have freedom.
Do you have love in your life?
I do. I have recent love in my life.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It feels very healthy, and I'm happy, and I'm finally finding myself, who I am and what I enjoy.
You feel better.
Yeah.
Okay, but I do want to read this about Hef's death, because I think it sort of sums it up from Glad. Hefner was not a visionary. He was a misogynist who built an empire on sexualizing women and mainstreaming stereotypes that caused irreparable damage to women's rights and our entire culture. I don't think this could thrive today. When you hear that about him, do you think that's accurate?
I think it's accurate. I think the mansion could never happen today. It was almost like it was some type of social experiment. Yeah, it can never be repeated, for sure.
Thank you for being here, Crystal.
I'm glad you have love in your life.
Yes.
And that you're feeling really better about your life these days.
Thank you.
I'm very glad to hear that.
First on CBS Mornings, Lulu Wang is with us now. Lulu, good morning. Thank you very much for being here. The heat and the intensity of this series is amazing.
Yes.
It is, and the mystery embedded in it as well. It's so good as a finished product. I'm curious why initially you said, I don't want to make this amazing thing.
You know, my last project, The Farewell, was autobiographical, and it was a small indie film that we made for very low budget in my grandma's hometown. So then to, you know, work with Nicole Kidman, work with Amazon, represent Hong Kong and all of these different communities that I wanted to represent, it just felt really daunting. And I felt a tremendous sense of responsibility. Like, if I'm gonna tell the stories, not just of the expats, but so many of the other communities and people who don't have their own voices, how do I do that? How do I make sure they're not misrepresented? And, so I think it was that sense of responsibility, but at the same time, I also didn't feel like, you know, storytellers should be limited to only telling their own stories and only things that are autobiographical. That would be far too limiting. So I think I was just grappling with how to make that leap.
And so you asked for control, right? You wanted to build it from the ground up.
Yes, yes.
What was that process like?
Yeah,
That's daunting.
To Nicole
they wrote a
Kidman.
book.
No, she just said, no, thanks, Nicole, nice to talk to you, but no thanks, I'm gonna pass. Yeah,
Yeah, I know. You get a phone call from Nicole Kidman, you say no, and then your conditions are, I need total
and I have
control.
some conditions, yes.
Yeah, you know, and it's daunting. It's not something that I was raised to necessarily do, and I think that it's something that I'm learning more and more.
What do you mean raised to necessarily? What do you mean?
Well, my parents are immigrants, you know, Chinese immigrants in America. Like, you don't say no. Like, you don't necessarily come from a place of abundance, right? Oh, there's all these opportunities everywhere. No, there's a scarcity mentality. You know, you take everything that comes to you. And so kind of shifting that mindset has been...
That's the beauty of it. The thing that got me about this is it's told from the perpetrator's point of view. You know, Nicole says, and you wrote it too, that's another thing that's so great. Nicole has a great line where she says, who do we think we are to think we are immune from tragedy? And in this particular thing, because the writer says, you normally focus on the victims or the survivors, but this you're focusing on the perpetrators. And I've never seen it focused that way before. That's the other thing that caught my eye. Why did you want to tell it from that point of view?
Well, because, you know, we all like to believe that we're empathetic.
Yes.
You know, we believe in reform. We believe in people's ability to rehabilitate.
Second chances.
Second chances, in theory. And so this is really looking at, well, do you have empathy towards all of these different types of people? Or are you going to make judgments based on who they are, where they're from, what their privileges are, you know, and the mistakes that they've made?
The three main female characters in it all are so strong but so flawed, and you see all of that in a way. How much of that was you drawing from your life, or just saying, I want to show all these sides of someone like that?
Yeah, it was my life, and also I worked with a writer's room for the first time in television, which is not something I've ever done before. I always write alone, and so just having this group of women, they happen to all be women, talk about their own lives, talk about, you know, actually, you know, there were moments where we would debate, we would disagree, and we would argue. And the writer's room is one of the few places where you have to work out your disagreements, right?
Well,
and you have to put that on screen.
I love that you and Barry Jenkins, who has been here before.
This is where I want to go to. Yeah.
Oh,
No, take it away. Take it away.
Hopefully, he told you had a lovely time here, because we loved having an Oscar-winning filmmaker of Moonlight. And so you've got two creative types in the house together, working in the same business. Do you all bounce ideas off of each other, or consult each other about
So
different
interesting.
projects?
Yeah. Please do tell.
Is that what you were thinking?
Yes, exactly.
Because he and Katie
my
Turner.
wife also works in my business.
Yes.
I'm always fascinated by how people who are in the same industry work together or don't. You guys are not working
Katie
together.
Turner of MSNBC.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, you know, the interesting and what's most helpful for us is when we actually bounce like business ideas. It's like the practical ideas off of each other. Like, is this a deal that I should be making? Should I be doing this project? What are the ways in which I should be navigating?
Not the creative.
Not like the creative comes later, because we have such different voices, and there's real freedom to being independent in our work, artistic work. And so we'll show each other cuts like way, way, way later, because you don't want to. I don't like if he sees it too early, then he loses that sense of being able to be fresh eyes.
I can't take criticism from my wife. She told me my hair was too big when I was on the road in New Hampshire. I was like, well, it's already happened, so I can't make it any lower.
This is why I don't have my mom.
Right. Oh, yeah. Mom is not allowed to comment on hair.
Thank you, Lulu.
Award-winning journalist Antonia Hylton is the author of Madness, Race, and Insanity in a Jim Crow Asylum. She uncovered inhumane conditions, the mistreatment of patients, and experimentation on some without their consent at Maryland's Crownsville State Hospital. It was built back in 1911 by its patients before closing in 2004. Now, this place was a microcosm of America's struggles with slavery, racial segregation, and, of course, civil rights. About 1,700 patients are still buried on its ground, the vast majority in unnamed graves. Antonia Hylton, we're glad to say, joins us right here on CBS Mornings. Good to see you, Antonia.
Good to see you. Thank you for
This
having me.
book made me so mad and made me so sad, and just it felt so many different emotions when I was reading. And to think that this is a true story. How did you hear about this place?
I first heard about this place when I was just 19 years old. I was a college student studying the history of psychiatry, and I think I was pulled into this work because I grew up in a very big family of 20-something cousins. I'm one of 7 kids, and we were very tight-knit, but we really struggled to talk about emotions and mental health.
Yeah.
And
you said you had a wide variety of things in your family, depression, anxiety.
Right. And I knew that. You know as a child, but you can see that your parents and your grandparents really struggle to talk about these incidents or these memories that they carry. And so I think when I was a teenager and first knew how to go study this by myself, to discover this work on my own, I took the opportunity. And one of the things you realize when you look at the history of mental health in this country is that it's often taught from the perspective only of white Europeans and white Americans. And so when I came across Crownsville's name, I just had to know more. And what I found was this very American story in which Jim Crow had seeped into the medical system, and it had really changed generations of Black families in Maryland. And when you talk to Black people in Baltimore and Annapolis to this day, many of them have a connection to this place, but very few people have ever given them the chance to talk about what happened there.
Yeah, and talk about what happened there. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Help people understand how difficult it was. There was a Pulitzer Prize reporter that did a story and said it was the most shameful thing that had ever been done in the state. It was hard to comprehend what was happening to the people there.
Well,
We've gone there for help, by the way.
Exactly. This is supposed to be a place for healing and rehabilitation, but in those early years, that's not what we find. They brought 12 black men into a forest and forced them initially to build this asylum, and they start to bring more and more patients in. And I think that tells you a lot from the very beginning, right? There are already hospitals around the state for white people in Maryland, but they're not allowed to get treatment there. And those patients didn't have to build their own hospital. But black people in Maryland had to build their own mental hospital before they could even get any care. And it's not until the 50s and 60s when black men and women first start getting jobs there, because originally they were barred from being able to serve their own
And you said
community.
that there was a shift when that happened.
There's a shift. And what you see is they start to uncover the injustices, patients that have been left in wards, just unclothed and unkept.
The shock treatments, Antonia.
Shock treatments. I spent time with a woman who's still living named Gertrude Belt, who came in the 50s, one of the first black employees, and one of her first acts of kindness was to sit patients down in between her legs and shampoo their hair and detangle their curls because nobody had been doing
It was so matted.
Well, it's now closed. It closed back in 2004. There was a ceremony where people went back and said, say the names of the patients who were there. That's very moving the way you tell it in the book.
Thank you. That is one of my favorite parts of the book.
Too.
And it's such a special ceremony that actually still happens every year. It's led by a woman named Janice Hayes Williams in Maryland, and it's open to the public. And she invites people to come and stand in a circle and say some of the names of the 1,700 people who are buried there, mostly in unmarked graves, as a way to help families who might be looking for loved ones and clues, and as a way to bring some healing, some recognition for a story that has been, so under wraps, so undercovered for so long. It closed in 2004 within all of our lifetimes.
Yes. Yeah.
But this is really the first time that it's being told to a national audience.
Is the hope and the expectation as this process continues that the unnamed graves will bear names and a proper memorial?
Well, I actually have, and this is compiled by Janice, all of the names of the 1,700 are in here.
Wow.
And there are a couple hundred, she thinks maybe 200 or more so that they are going to discover soon. But she is working to connect people and communities in Maryland and beyond with their loved ones who were buried there.
Honoring and remembering the forgotten.
And you also say if you swallow your pain, it never digests, and treated pain curdles your blood and changes your code. And that's why it's important to tell these stories. I know you all have heard of a TED Talk. I bet you've watched a few TED Talks. Well, the head of the organization behind TED Talks is Chris Anderson. He thinks a little generosity can change the world. And if you're a little skeptical, I see you out there, of this very big claim. Here's what Chris has to say about that.
Generosity, come on. I mean, surely that's way too tiny a force to pit against the ugly world we're facing. Not necessarily. Remember this guy? This is so small, it's invisible, but somehow it still found a way to shut down the world economy. Here's the thing, you don't need to be big to be powerful. You just need to be infectious.
I love that. So how do we do that? Anderson's new book is called Infectious Generosity, The Ultimate Idea Worth Spreading, explores that very question. And we're very proud to tell you that he joins us first on CBS Mornings. I love Chris because that is how you start the book, and I hadn't thought of it that way. And it made me think about things that we're all doing in our lives. But you said we can all ask this, the most powerful moral question is this: am I a net giver or a net taker? When I take stock of my life, do I think about the people I've hurt versus the people I have helped? Two very important questions that we can all do and all ask ourselves. And you're hoping we'll get what from asking ourselves that?
Well, everyone can answer that question in a different way. There's so many ways to be kind. It's certainly not just about giving money. The reason I ask that question is just that it simplifies a lot of stuff. If everyone in the world, on average, was a net giver, we're going to be okay.
Right.
We're going to be okay. And the question is, how do we do that? The world is so mean right now, Gayle. It's really a mean place. We're kind of talking ourselves down, I think. We're thinking the worst of each other. And the stories we tell each other shape who we are. So that's the question. Could you reshape kindness just a little bit so that, like that virus, kindness itself can go viral?
And you believe we can do that, Chris? I wonder if people sometimes just enjoy being mean.
Well, I think they might enjoy it in the moment, but one of the beautiful discoveries of psychology and science, and it's emphasized again and again, is that if you can find that way to be your generous self, something amazing happens. You end up with this whisper that says, wow, this feels good.
Yes.
It actually makes you happy. It can give you meaning. And I wish that was more broadly known.
Speaking of beautiful discoveries, one of the great things about social media is viral videos. And you have viral videos that are mean-spirited. There are fights that go viral, but some of the best ones are videos of generosity. And you talk about watching those videos and what it can do for the human spirit. Like a video of a young man giving away sandwiches that racked up hundreds of millions of views. And we see them time and time again. Why do you think watching those types of videos does something for the human heart?
Well, it's a deep part of our psychology that it's, first of all, if we receive generosity or kindness, we just naturally respond. It's wired into us to do that. But we don't even have to be the recipient ourselves. When we see someone else being kind to someone
It's so
else,
true.
It's proven in science. It gives this feeling of uplift that makes it more likely for someone to be kind. So every time you on this show, as you often do, show a piece of human kindness, you've got millions of viewers. That is actually creating ripples of good, and it's a beautiful thing.
But what about this experiment that you did, which you say proves that we were in fact hardwired to be kind? What did it show?
Right, so we got a ringside seat on this crazy experiment with the University of British Columbia where 200 strangers on the internet were given $10,000 each, no strings attached, and from a generous donor in the tech community. And what happened was they did not spend most of that money on themselves. They spent 2/3 of it on other people.
Even when they needed it, Chris.
Even when they needed it. And so this is the biggest experiment done at this kind of scale. And it is really, really, really encouraging. Humans at heart want to be good. And we respond to each other. If we can get these chains of generosity going, they will spread.
You know, I really do believe this. I'm not just blowing smoke up you, but I do think that if everybody read this book, it would be a different world and it would make us think differently. So I thank you for that. You say, question we could ask ourselves, what is the most generous version of everything I do? That we could start our day thinking that way. Why?
Because it's hard to be kind, you know. Like most of the time,
it's hard to be kind.
Yeah, we're busy. We're focused on ourselves. You know, you walk down the street. You know you've got a busy day at work coming. It's hard to find that generous mindset that will even look at someone else.
It takes effort.
So, yeah, it takes effort. There's a little bit of discomfort. You have
to be intentional.
Yeah, you have to be intentional. But just the act of letting someone else feel seen,
and
generosity starts there. And so once you go on that journey, all bets are off as to what happens next.
But you carry stuff from your mother because you said your mother, you had at a very early age that sometimes you felt guilty that it was daunting. But look how you turned out, Chris Anderson.
She was incredible. You know, she lived for something bigger than she was, and she inspired me that actually that is where the most happiness and meaning comes from. If you can find a way to live for something that's bigger than you are.
That's beautiful.
It's beautiful what it carries with it.
I so believe that. I know that that's true. A new book for middle schoolers tells a first-hand account of one of the last known survivors of the transatlantic slave trade. His name was Cudjoe Lewis. Barracoon was adopted by Ibram X. Kendi from an original work by Zora Neale Hurston. It's based on her interviews with Lewis in the late 1920s. Lewis describes being captured in Africa and put in barracks, or barracoon is what they were called, before he was forced to go to America on a slave ship. Lewis also details a life he built once granted freedom. Ibram X. Kendi is the director of the Center for Anti-Racist Research at Boston University, and as CBS News contributor, we're very happy to have you here as always, Ibram X. Kendi. Why did you think that middle schoolers needed to hear this story? I love that at one point in the book you say, past is present because of stories, and past is always teaching stories. Because this is brutal and this is raw, what this man went through.
Well, I think, you know, in Germany, they teach young children about the Holocaust. In South Africa, they teach about apartheid. I think in the United States, it's critically important, and really in the Americas more broadly, for us to teach about slavery. Of course, we should teach in a developmentally appropriate form, and what better developmentally appropriate form than through the life story of someone who experienced it.
Now, Zora first started interviewing him. That's what I think is so cool. At 1927,
Yes.
it took to 2018 for us to finally hear the story. How old was he at the time when she started talking to him?
He was pushing 90.
Yes,
He was
yes.
pushing 90 years old. Yeah.
And give us a sense of what he went through, because he talks about it very descriptively.
Well, he was born in what's present-day Benin, West Africa, and he was captured as a teenager, taken from his homeland, brought to the Barracoons, eventually brought over to what's now Mobile, Alabama, and enslaved, and spent a few years in slavery, and then found freedom. And him and others who came across on this ship called Clotilda decided they wanted to create Africa Town because they missed Africa.
Of home.
Why do you think it was so hard for her to get the work published? She interviewed him in 1927, and the book wasn't published many, many years after that. Why?
Well, Zora was very serious about ensuring that readers not only knew Cudjoe's story, but heard his voice. And so she was very keen on in ensuring that his voice, his vernacular, his language was in the story, and publishers pushed back, against that. But again, that was something that was incredibly important to her.
And when you say in his voice, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we're asking the same question.
Yes.
When you touch on language, you're very intentional about how this book reads. And you talk about how Ebonics, or the language that has been lost, is something that you wanted to make sure readers digested. Why were you so intentional about that?
Well, first, because Zora was serious about it. And so I tried to figure out a way to ensure that middle graders could read the text, but also hear Cudjoe's voice.
Yeah.
And of course, that was not easy, but I thought it was incredibly important.
Did you have concern that it might be confusing at all?
Well, I think that was my job as a writer, to ensure that it was as legible as possible for middle graders.
I mean, I think it's tough because we were talking a little bit, and we talked about this with the last book that you wrote. As a parent, and you know this, you struggle to try to get your children to be able to speak in a way that they can function in all levels of society. And I wonder if there's a concern from you that, a child who perhaps is struggling with that would read a book like this and not understand the story because they're spending a lot of time trying to decipher the language.
Well, it's interesting because there are stories that my daughter, who's 7 years old, reads with multiple languages. And it's obviously a harder story to read, but as a parent, I actually want her to learn multiple languages. I want her to hear voices spoken in different ways.
And challenge your intellect.
Exactly, and so that's how I understand that teachers and parents hopefully would receive this story.
Why do you think, because I struggled too when I was reading it. My brain went into overtime. I was raised in such a house, Ibram, where proper grammar was important.
Same.
I was corrected if I said, can I have so-and-so? No, it's not can, what is it? It's may. I mean,
No slang. Slang was not allowed.
No, slang was not, yes. Yeah. I was raised, did we have the same thing?
Maybe.
So how do we do that balance? I have the same question with Vlad. I think when you're older and you understand, you can discern the difference. But I think when you're a little kid and you're reading, I worried about that too.
Well, I think we can understand it as a different language.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think
of it as such.
Yeah, and think of it as such, and appreciate it as such, and convey it to our children as such, and also in a nation that conveys itself as multicultural.
Yeah.
That means we have to teach our kids to accept and appreciate multiple languages.
And preservation is key as well.
Exactly.
Especially in a day and age where they're banning books, which ultimately bans history, our history.
And this book was pretty much banned for almost a century, which is why I'm so glad
Why it's so
out.
glad it's out.
Yeah.
And that's why we're glad you're here. Thank you very much.